Today is Tuesday, May 5th, and this is VOA's International Edition. I'm Lundin in Washington. Coming up, a global effort to work collaboratively and pledge funding for COVID-19 vaccine research.
Today we can truly say the world is united against the coronavirus, and the world will win.
Health experts continue to urge slow and cautious reopening in the U.S. as the number of cases and deaths continue to rise. Also ahead, more and more musicians are reflecting on the new realities of quarantine and social distancing. It's all on today's International Edition. The reopening of the U.S. economy and loosening of coronavirus-prompted restrictions remained uneven and varied throughout the country, while some state leaders started to allow restaurants, malls, movie theaters, and other venues to reopen. Others, like Kentucky Governor Andy Bashir, say they'll begin phase one, a slow and gradual approach.
So we have other states that are following a different schedule than we are. We don't believe that that's necessarily safe. We believe a slow, gradual reopening is the better way to go, because the first person to charge out there is the one that's willing to risk people's lives at a greater degree than I will ever be willing to risk your life.
The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Monday reported more than 67,000 confirmed deaths in the nation, while a key model used by the White House updated its forecast with a projection of nearly 135,000 coronavirus deaths in the nation through the beginning of August, mainly due to reopening measures underway. The revised numbers are almost double the number of deaths foreseen since the last estimate in mid-April. And as governors weigh the number of cases versus a desire to get businesses back up and running, health experts warn about opening too soon. Joining us to talk about it is Dr. Tina Tan, board member with the Infectious Disease Society of America and a professor of pediatrics and infectious diseases at the Feinberg School of Medicine at Northwestern University. Thank you so much for being with us, Doctor. What is your view of all this reopening in the U.S.?
To be honest, on a realistic level, I don't know if we have enough information currently to know exactly where we are. One of the major problems that we've had is that we have had a limited availability of testing nationwide, so that, we don't know how many people actually are infected, how many people have been infected. And until we get better understanding of that, we're not going to be able to reopen the country safely.
It doesn't seem like the states are able to do it on their own, and it doesn't seem like the federal government is really following through with what it's saying it's going to do as far as getting those tests out there. So in the meantime, what will happen with all these states saying everything is good and they're opening up? What are the implications of that?
The risk of lifting all these social distancing restrictions and reopening businesses too soon can actually have really disastrous consequences. And what's going to happen is that you're going to get a resurgence of the COVID-19 outbreak, and this can result in a significant spread of the infection, an increase in the number of individuals that need to be hospitalized, and also an increased number of individuals that are going to die from the infection. There's also a major potential, if that happens, to completely overwhelm the healthcare facilities, and all this is going to lead to more negative economic impacts. One of the major things is that we really need to think about reopening areas of the country very carefully, because if we don't do it properly, there are going to be many more people infected and many more people that die from this infection.
How do we know that?
Well, one of the things that we can sort of draw some of this from is what's happened in certain areas of Germany, where they've reopened the shops and areas, and there's been a resurgence of COVID-19 cases. To some extent, it's also been reported in China, where they've reopened certain areas of the country and they've had resurgence of cases. One of the major problems that we have here, in addition to not having enough testing, is that we don't have the infrastructure in place for cities and states to basically rapidly scale up their healthcare capacity if they need it, if there are recurrent outbreaks. We need to have adequate supplies of PPE. We need to know that we have adequate ICU beds and ventilators available, as well as other critical equipment. And right now, in many areas of the country, we just don't have that. The other thing is that states and other local and regional areas really need to be able to track individuals that have been exposed to COVID-19 individuals so that we can figure out how many of these individuals themselves are infected. And we really need to be able to expand testing to many different areas of the country, especially to areas that are experiencing health disparities. So you're talking about individuals that live in rural communities, individuals that live in areas that are socioeconomically depressed. You're talking about homeless. You're talking about people in nursing homes and other long-term care facilities, in prisons. We really have to be able to test all these individuals to get a better idea of where we are.
These meat plants, thousands of people getting infected, some of them dying, the president ordering them to stay open, no specific guidelines or rules as to what they're planning on doing to keep them safe. States like Florida, Georgia, what seems like flipping the light switch. They say they're still going to have social distancing rules, but is that possible if you open places of business where people congregate?
Is that going to be good? No. Basically, it's just not possible. Yes, they say they have social distancing rules, but then you see the videos of these areas and people are just stacked one on top of the other. And, you know, if there's not adequate testing, then we don't know who's infected. Yes, there is more testing that's being done, but it's just not being done in a rapid enough fashion to really get a grip on the true number of individuals that are infected.
Is it safe to say that many Americans, when they see things open, will give in to temptation, will let their guards down, will feel like, well, nothing's happening right around me, I'm fine, and we could be potentially in a worse situation than we were to begin with?
We could be. I'm sure there will be many Americans that will sort of follow the rules and continue to do social distancing and other isolation measures, but then there are going to be other areas where people are going to do exactly what you mentioned. They're just going to go out and do whatever they want. And yes, that's going to create a major problem because we're going to see a resurgence of COVID-19 in those areas, and it could be worse than what we currently see now.
How concerned are you about what you are seeing as far as states reopening?
Absolutely, I'm concerned about this. I mean, I really think that the states reopening as rapidly as they're doing it is really not taking into account the fact that we just don't have the information that we need in order to safely reopen the country.
Dr. Tina Tan with the Infectious Disease Society of America and a professor of infectious diseases at the Feinberg School of Medicine at Northwestern University. As global coronavirus cases surpassed 3.5 million on Monday and deaths neared 250,000, dozens of countries, foundations, and organizations participated in an online initiative hosted by the European Union in a global effort to get pledges for funding for research, manufacturing, and distribution of a possible vaccine and treatments for COVID-19. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said this was only the beginning of a very big global effort.
And in the space of just a few hours, we have collectively pledged 7.4 billion euros for vaccines, diagnostics, and treatments. And all this money will help kickstart unprecedented global cooperation.
She also noted a surprise and large donation from a pop music icon.
I just got the message that Madonna has announced a contribution of $1 million to the coronavirus global response, and that shows that the global response must also include social society, civil society, and the global community of citizens.
Well, joining us now to talk more about this global coalition and pledge drive is Paris-based reporter Catherine Field. Catherine, tell us about this and how it came about.
There had been a fear, particularly fear that the United States or China might get a head start on the vaccinations involved in finding some way ahead with the coronavirus, not just the vaccination, of course, but diagnostics. And so the European Union got together with these other countries to get the money together, to get pledges together, to ensure that if there is a vaccine, if there is some new diagnostic available, that it will be available, accessible and affordable to all, that it won't be just going to the richest countries. And that was why they really got together here the first day of this pledging to get that money together. Now, they got together $8 billion US. That might seem a lot of money, but in this world, that won't go very far. That's going to go in, for example, $3 billion is going to be spent to develop, manufacture and distribute a possible vaccine. We're needing to look at another $2.25 billion to develop treatments. And we're going to need something like $800 million for testing kits. And then you've got whatever sum is needed to stockpile protective equipment. So that was what the money is for. It's just the start. We're still looking at a June 4th launch day for this global vaccination movement, but it's certainly a good start.
As you mentioned, there were world leaders, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Angela Merkel. What other countries participated?
Canada was also there. We had Saudi Arabia that was also taking part in it. There was the United Kingdom. There were special guests who were there. The King Abdullah II of Jordan, President of South Africa, President of Turkey. All of these were present on this virtual conference that was live, beamed right across the European Union and many other countries.
Was America invited, or was this out of concern that America and the Trump administration policy of America first would be prohibited to the rest of the world?
The United States and China were invited to this global pledging event, but they didn't come. Of course, the big concern has been that because of America First policy, it might mean the unfair distribution of any vaccine. But people are still here hoping that China and the United States will change their minds. They will give more money to this pledge. French President Emmanuel Macron said after the initiative, he said that he was convinced the Americans would join. He said they were on the sideline today, but he said that wouldn't hold back the initiative because he feels the initiative has to keep going forward. And when you look, for example, at what France contributed today, 500 million euros, that's a lot, but you put that together with the 1.2 billion euros that France has already put through the French Development Agency to support healthcare systems in Africa, we're seeing France in particular take a very crucial role in this. They want to make sure that it is a global effort. It's a multilateral, a multinational effort, and not one that's led just by one nation.
President Macron really has taken a strong leadership role since this pandemic began.
This is what he likes. He likes multilateralism. He likes helping. He likes looking forward. Some people have criticized him for it, saying that he's sort of making it up as he goes along. Others are saying that this is the sort of initiative that the world needs. And we heard that in most of the speeches, particularly Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau and German Chancellor Angela Merkel, talking about how the coronavirus pandemic needs a multilateral solution.
Well, I do understand there were some NGOs from the U.S., foundations and companies taking part.
Yes, Bill and Melinda Gates, they were there. Their foundation, of course, has been very much behind the coronavirus vaccination push. But the big name that came out of nowhere, no one expected, was she gave €1 million to this fund. And you could really see when the EU Commission President announced this that she was so pleased because it really did give more of an international feel to this, that it really was the whole world coming together, giving money where they can to try and make sure that any global vaccine has fair access.
Vaccinate one part of the world, not the rest. And as we've seen with this virus, it doesn't know borders and boundaries. How are they going to determine where the money goes as far as research into the vaccines and treatments?
The next big event to look at for this vaccination push is June 4th. That will be the launch day And there you're looking at more of the international players will be involved. The World Bank, the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, and the World Health Organization. Once we see all these bodies come together, you will have more of a picture of how far and how fast they will be going. What the feeling is that by pooling the resources, the developing and the developed world and everyone can move ahead, because unless everyone is vaccinated, really it's considered that no one will be safe, that no one.
Paris-based reporter Catherine Field, thank you for being with us. Here are some of the other stories we're following at VOA. Environmental activists delivered a petition to a special session of the Swiss Parliament Monday demanding that a government aid package should promote a green recovery from the coronavirus. With some lawmakers wearing protective face masks, Parliament convened at an exhibition center rather than its normal building, so members had extra space to maintain social distancing rules. An internal Chinese report warns that Beijing faces a rising wave of hostility in the wake of the coronavirus outbreak that could tip relations with the United States into confrontation. The report, presented early last month by the Ministry of State Security to top Beijing leaders, including President Xi Jinping, concluded that global anti-China sentiment is at its highest since the 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown. And Israel's top court on Monday heard challenges to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's bid to secure a governing coalition, with opposition figures arguing a deal on a new unity administration would unlawfully shield him in a corruption trial. The Supreme Court's 11-justice panel convened for a second day after hearing separate petitions on Sunday against Netanyahu's authority to form a government, given his indictment on charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. Stay with VOA for all the latest U.S. and world news.